So one of my great joys in life, I say it again and again, I love making things that are beautiful for God and useful for His people. But I always pray that we make something that's beautiful for God, glorifying to Him, and then actually helpful. I think, though, until you make a relationship with God the biggest thing in your life, it's really hard to make beautiful things for Him. I think until you make Him actually God of your life, I think it's hard to be useful for Him. I think He actually has to be in charge. I think He actually has to be the king of your life. I'll never forget, my wife came to my office at the church where I work, and she saw this, and she said, "Oh, what's that?" And I said, "Oh, I'm going to give a talk about how, what's the king of your life? Like, what's in charge of your life?" And my wife picks it up, and she says, "Well, of course, I'm the queen of your life." I was like, "You really should come to this talk." And I think we do that all the time. And I think we live as if we don't know that there's a God. I think we live as if we're not letting ourselves be known by Him. Now, my wife is a saint, and I think she was just kidding around. I don't think she intends to replace God, but I think we do that a lot. I think sometimes that's what we do, and we live as if we don't know Him. Jesus in Matthew's gospel, and this is where the whole title known comes from. Jesus in Matthew's gospel, Matthew chapter 7, He talks about people, religious people, who hang out around Him and listen to the talks that He gives and appear religious, but do not know Him, and He does not know them. I think it's the scariest passage in the Bible, especially for us as Catholics. Because in our tradition, because we have such an ancient and rich and dynamic tradition, it is easy to let the tradition sit kind of over there and just show up at church, and it looks like we're holy, and it looks like we know Him. I think this is the scariest passage in all of Scripture, especially for Catholics. And Jesus says, "Yeah, you looked religious, and I didn't know you." That you will die, and you'll see God, and you'll stand at the gates of heaven, and I'll say, "Yeah, I didn't know who you were. And you didn't know me. You looked religious, but you didn't know me. You didn't have that personal relationship with God." And the word for knew or known, I didn't know you, is egnon. The Greek word egnon, it means something more than intellectual knowledge. Like it says uses that Greek word in 1 Corinthians. It says that God took Him, meaning Jesus, who did not know sin, to then be sin on the cross for us and accept the punishment. So Jesus did not egnon sin. Well, Jesus consciously knew what sin was, obviously, but He didn't have a relationship with it. Do you see that difference? That's what the word egnon means. It's not intellectual knowledge, it's relationship. And Jesus is saying to these people that look really religious, which would describe a lot of the Pharisees that Jesus was interacting with, He's saying, I don't have a relationship with you. Like, you look religious, and that's great. But like, for real, I'm not the Christ or the King of your life. I'm not the biggest thing in your life. Like, you're not letting me actually be God. We don't have a relationship. And if we want to improve our relationships with other people, I think it all starts by improving our relationship with God. And I think we even pray for our relationships with other people, but we pray for our relationships with other people, but we still, while we're praying, don't let God be God. Do you know what the Greek word for prayer is? The Greek word for prayer is prosokomai. Prosokomai literally means to exchange your plans for somebody else's. So to prosokomai, Jesus did it in the Garden of Gethsemane. He prosokomai'd, literally. He said, "God, the Father, I don't want to die on the cross, but not my will, your will be done. So here's my plan, God, but I'm going to give it to you, and I'm going to exchange it with your plan for me, Father." Jesus literally prayed. This is the only thing that prayer means. Prosokomai does not mean anything else. It means taking your plans, giving them to somebody else, and then accepting theirs, and then following theirs. That's what Jesus did in the Garden of Gethsemane. So if I'm praying for my wife, it's not, well, God, fix her, or make her do this, and make her do that, and blah, blah, blah. It's saying, God, well, here are the things that I guess I'd like for my wife, but what do you want for her, and how am I supposed to influence her life? Here are the things I want for my son, but I'm going to put those aside, and what are your plans for my son? I'm going to let you be the God of those relationships. I'm going to stop being in charge, and I'm going to put you in charge. I think really at the end of the day, it's a decision. Here's my big chess piece. Are you the chess player or the chess piece? Well, if you're the chess player in your life, you have kept God on the periphery. If you're the chess player in your relationships with other people, you do not have God in those relationships. You are keeping him on the sidelines. You and I are the chess piece. I mean, if there's a God and that's where you came from, then of course, like what else are you? You're the creation and he's the creator. You're the chess piece, he's the chess player. He's the potter, you're the pot. I mean, that's what it is. He's the father, you're his child. Like, that's the relationship. And yet so often we try to be the father instead of the child, and we try to be the potter instead of the pot, and we try to be the chess player instead of the chess piece. And when we do that in our relationships, they're going to blow up. I mean, you're going to end up micromanaging people to death, and they're never going to want to listen to you. If you're the chess piece, you'll probably get to speak into somebody's life at a critical moment. And God will open a window where they're going to listen for just a brief moment of time, and you might get to speak truth into their lives. You might say 2 sentences that stick with them forever because you were the chess piece. Or you could be the chess player and say millions of sentences that they never hear. I mean, if there's any place where that's true, if you're a parent, you know that's true. You know, it's like St. Francis said that you should preach the gospel all the time and use words only when necessary. I think that's the heart of being the chess piece instead of the chess player. So God calls us to be the chess piece. Anybody know what this is? It's a jar of water, right? It's a large jar of water. I got this today at the Neshaminy Creek. The Neshaminy Creek is actually overflowing right now. I went down near Tyler Park and scooped up some water, right? So is this the Neshaminy Creek? I don't, sure, I guess, kind of, I don't know. I'm sure you could debate that for the rest of your life, you know. It's one of those silly arguments. But like, is it really the Neshaminy Creek? Sure, but not really, right? I'm going to be really disappointed if I go to this jar of water to go canoeing or fishing or swimming. I'm going to be like, the Neshaminy Creek stinks. This is awful. I can't catch any fish in here. My canoe doesn't fit. I can't go swimming in here. The water's not even rushing by. It's not even tranquil to sit by. It's totally useless. How many times do we do this with God? Instead of letting him be God, instead of letting the Neshaminy Creek be bigger than us and be the creek, the Neshaminy Creek's 40 miles long. Instead of letting the Neshaminy Creek be 40 miles long and be bigger than us, we make it like this, it's really useless. If we let it be 40 miles long and let it be what it is, it's a really great place to go. It's a really serene place, and you can do really cool things there, like swim and go canoeing and fish and all kinds of great stuff. But you have to actually be what it is, a 40-mile-long creek. You can't just put it in a jar. It has to be the whole thing. We have to do the same thing with God. He's either going to be God or he's going to be nothing at all to us. He's going to be just like this. And then we're like, well, you know, and then we get into arguments about God, right? Oh, well, see, look. And I learned a long time ago that we have to be so careful. I certainly believe in objective truth. Like, I believe Jesus Christ objectively is God, objectively, historically died on the cross for my sins, and then historically rose from the dead. I actually believe that. And I believe that if I think otherwise, that it's incorrect. So I believe in objective truth in my bones. But I also believe that the truth is bigger than me because the truth is God, and that I cannot fully comprehend it. Like, I could go down to the Neshaminy Creek and I could probably see, if I'm really lucky on a great day, maybe a mile this way, maybe a mile that way. If I'm in a really great spot, I can't see the whole Neshaminy Creek at once. I am not capable because I'm finite, I'm limited. I can't see 40 miles. Well, how, if I can't see the hole in a Chamonix Creek, am I going to be able to see everything about God? And how am I going to then be able to perceive all of God's plans for everybody else? How could I dare to think of being the chess player in other people's lives for God? How could I do anything but be humble enough to be the chess piece in Joanne's life, and the chess piece in John's life, and the chess piece in Naya's life and Noah's life? Anything else, and I'm making myself God. I mean, I guess the secular term for that is being like a helicopter parent or a helicopter spouse. We have to let God be God of our kids, and we have to choose to cooperate with his plan for them. He's a better parent than us. He's a better spouse than us. Jesus Christ is a better spouse than us. He's better at everything. He's a better coach. He's a better teacher. Golly, I want to help cooperate with Jesus teaching my kids. If my son John can learn how to have a relationship with God where he listens to God, and what happens in his prayer life then changes his actions, I'm done. I'm good. I don't care where he goes to college. I don't care what else happens. If he's actually having a conversation with God and listening to him and that shapes his life, he's going to be all right, no matter what happens in his life. And if he doesn't, I just don't think there are any promises. So I have to think, am I going to be the chess piece or the chess player? I'm going to be the chess piece so he can meet the real chess player. I want to be someone who leads him into that relationship with God. Got 2 jars here, right? I'm going to put the same amount of items in each jar. We've got some small stones, some large stones, some sand, and a brick, and then we've got 2 lids to put on top of it. Okay. And we're going to say that God, if God exists, he's the biggest thing. So here's the biggest thing. For this jar, I'm going to put the biggest thing in first. For this jar, I'm going to put the biggest thing in last. And I'm going to decide to put the smallest thing in first. The things that we think are really important, like winning that CYO basketball game in 3rd grade. Pretty sure when I meet Jesus, he's not going to be like, that shot was awesome, you can come to heaven. Or, I'm sorry, you missed your foul shots, kid, you're not welcome here. I'm pretty sure that's not what's going to be a priority to him, but it's the biggest priority to us, isn't it? So I'm going to put the sand in first, right? And then next, I'm going to put in this jar the next biggest thing, like my relationships with people that I love. Like my parents, my kids, my spouse. And this one, I'm going to put the next, biggest thing here. I'm going to go from smallest to one, just a little bit bigger. I'll put things like my job. I work for the church. I'm really important. I did youth ministry, so I'm kind of a big deal. And in here, I'm going to put, I put the big rock, the little rocks, and then finally, after putting in my relationships, I'll put in my relationship with my work, my ministry, like coming here tonight. Like what I did tonight, before putting everything together for this presentation, I put Noah in the shower and picked him up from school early so we could hang out, because Noah really has a tough time going to bed if we don't hang out. And I promised him I'd bring him home donuts tonight. He won't get to eat them till tomorrow morning, but just knowing that I'm bringing him home donuts, he knows what I'm doing. And it just comforts him, so he'll go to bed. And it's a big thing if he goes to bed without me. But I could put things in the wrong order here. I go from smallest to biggest, and God doesn't fit. I go from biggest to smallest, and God certainly fits. Who do you want to be? More importantly, who do you want the people around you to be? How about the people that you love? Do you want to be this or this? The same items are in each jar, but in one jar I put the real big thing first and it all fit. In this jar I put in the big thing, God, last, and he didn't fit. And then I'm afraid that sometimes we end up living a life with God on the outside because we think God can't fit. God can't fit. Like, look, I'm a CYO coach. We got to win the championship. There's no room for God here. Or maybe in more serious things, like in my professional life, like if I follow Jesus Christ and love other people the way he would want me to, I don't think I'm going to get that contract. I think that if you put God first, the Bible's right. Everything else will come in time. Jesus said, seek first the kingdom of heaven, and everything else that you really need will be given to you. Don't seek first the kingdom of heaven, and you'll try to get all these other things, and you might even get them. And you'll have God on the outside. And Jesus Christ said, what good is it if I gain the whole world, but I lose my soul? Like, what good is that? What good is it if I have my kids gain the whole world, but lose their soul? Like, what's the most important thing, really? Like, what is the king of my life actually? What is the big thing? The biggest thing in your life is God. Even if all you believe is that there just is a God, that's it, it's all you believe. You don't believe in Jesus, you don't believe in the church, you just think there's a God out there. Well, then he would be the biggest thing. And so seek him first. Seek him first. In fact, seek him with your whole heart. It says in the Old Testament, God says, you will seek me and you will find me when you seek me with your whole heart, as if I'm the biggest thing. Seek me as if I am who I say I am, and you will find me. Seek me as if I'm some idea on the sideline of your life, you'll never find me. Seek me and make me the king and God of your life, and everything else will fall into place. Your doubts will fall into place. The truth about me will fall into place. All the church teachings you struggle with will fall into place in time. Just make me first, and everything else will come in time. Be the chess player, and it's all going to blow up. Make me first, and everything will come together. I think sometimes in life, our relationships are a lot like eggs. I mean, and I mean this, and I don't mean this in a sarcastic way. I think people are more fragile than we think. My wife, Joanne, I didn't always know that she had lupus. I really praise God that at least maybe 75% of the time, I loved her well enough to not expect her to be healthier than she was. So here's Joanne. I thank God that I sought in our relationship to please him instead of her and to choose relationship over being right, or I think we would have been divorced. Because lupus is a really tough disease, and you don't even know what's happening to your spouse, and you just think she's crazy and lazy and disinterested and not loving you and not loving your kids. I praise Jesus Christ that I chose relationship instead of being right, or I guarantee I would have been divorced. I mean, I actually stood at that precipice saying, wow, this is probably where people just get divorced. I see this. And I'm so glad that I chose relationship instead of being right. If you want to save your marriage, start choosing relationship. And I'm telling you from experience, not from some pie-in-the-sky philosophy. Choose relationship. Choose to imitate him. And so I think Joanne is fragile. I think Naya's fragile. I mean, God bless Naya. She's an African-American kid with 2 white parents living in this crazy world with all this stuff going on and people telling her what it is to be black and white and all that. Wow. She's fragile. I think John's fragile. He's a good basketball player, but he was selective mute. I think Noah's fragile. You see what I'm getting at? It's getting to be a lot to juggle. I think serving God's people, all of God's people are fragile. So I should be really ready to give a talk when I'm giving a talk to God's people. I think the guy driving next to me on the road is fragile. I think everybody's fragile. And if I try to hold all these eggs and respect them the way that I should, I'd have to be God. I'm not capable of holding all this. And life will get you there. Like the pendulum will eventually stop swinging. You will eventually realize, oh no, I'm not God. I can't hold Joanne and my kids and everybody else. So how about I just start placing them in God's hands. There's a little nice plastic egg carton. It says God on it. How about I just take Joanne and put her in God's hands? How about I just take all of God's people and put them in God's hands? There's this great quote, I forget which pope, but it's going back the last century. The church was in crisis, and he said, God, I've had enough. I'm tired. It's your church. I'm going to bed. That's actually a really good prayer, because he's just saying, God, it's your church. I'm going to go to bed. I'm sure in the morning you'll tell me what I got to do. I'm going to put Noah in here. I'm going to put John in here, and I'm going to put Naya in here, and I'm going to seek first the kingdom of heaven and a relationship with God, and everything else is going to be all right. Everything else is going to be all right, and I'm going to worry about one relationship instead of 100. And I'm going to worry about a relationship with God, and when I go home tonight, I'm going to go home to please God, and I don't know what will happen. I mean, I really don't. My family is crazy. Like, we've gone through some crazy stuff. But I will go home to please God, and I'll be ready because I'm going to respond to Him. I'm going to go to work tomorrow to please God. I'll come here tomorrow night to please God. And I will be okay, and it will be beautiful because I'm pleasing Him. But here's what this relies on. This relies on you believing that God is a person who can actually direct your life. Like I said yesterday about that friend in my Bible study, my prayer group, I was talking about trusting our kids to God. And trusting your kids to God is not passive. Like, trusting your kids to God is very active. It's sitting in the presence of God and saying, I put them in your hands, God. I want your things for them, your plans for them. I want you to be king of their life. Now show me how to love them so I can cooperate with your plan. And I'm going to respond to you when I see them next, not to my ideas for them. I'm going to be the chess piece instead of the chess player, because I know that you are real and you will speak into my life. Jesus Christ in John's Gospel said that anyone who obeys his word, anybody who welcomes him, he will come make a home inside of their hearts. You think Jesus is a liar? Jesus Christ will make a home in your heart. You will know the truth, and he will make those little shifts in your thinking when you pray about things to lead you in your life. If you sit and pray for your spouse tonight, or your kids, or your enemy, I don't know what God will do for your spouse or your kids or your enemy. I don't know if they'll choose to cooperate with God's grace. But I do know that if you're praying for them, you will better choose to cooperate with God's grace. I think sometimes we're just supposed to pray for our enemies so God can change us. Our enemy might not change at all, but we'll love them better. I think sometimes we're supposed to pray for our spouse and our kids, not so that God changes them, but so that God changes us, so that we're a better vessel for him, for them. You know, you can't control anybody else's decision about God. You can only control yours. It's as Augustine said. He said, God created you without you. Says Pope Benedict, but it was Augustine. God created you without you, but he cannot save you without you. Like, it takes each individual making their own decision, and you can't control someone else's thinking or their hearts. But you can control yours. And as Jesus Christ said, only the Father can lead people to the Son. Jesus Christ didn't even lead people to himself. Well, what are you doing? The Father will lead people to Jesus Christ, to the Son. You just have to cooperate with him. And so what I want most for my kids is for God's life, for a relationship with God to enter their lives. And I just want to be the best vessel for that possible. And I know that for me, the first step is choosing relationship and imitating Christ instead of choosing being right. And then putting them in God's hands, which is an active listening, not a passive, like pushing off the responsibility, but saying, okay, God, no, I'm going to pray for my kids every day, and I'm going to listen to you tomorrow morning when I pray for them. You know, like I told you yesterday, I pray God bless Naya, and then I listen. What would that look like, God? God bless John, and I listen. God bless Joanne, and I listen. Like tomorrow, Joanne's going to wake up and she's going to get the second shot for the coronavirus, right? Which is a big deal in our house because of her lupus and because of Noah, and she's a teacher and she's been awesome going and teaching in person all year. It's just beautiful. But it's a big deal, and she's nervous about getting that second shot because she knows there's a lot of side effects. We have friends who've had side effects. And we know coronavirus is a real serious thing. My uncle died of coronavirus. I mean, we had to help bury him. I do all these streaming of all these masses and things, and I was live streaming my uncle's funeral at this church in New Jersey, so I know that it's real. And I'm sure my wife is scared about that, because she's told me that. I could offer her a whole bunch of platitudes, or I could just offer her God. I don't know. I mean, at some point, we're all going to die. At some point, platitudes aren't going to be enough. At some point, bad things happen, but God is bigger than those things. More than anything, I want Joanne to have God. I'm not going to go home and give her a lecture about God, but because I want her to have God, I'm going to go home and make sure I'm listening to him. When she talks to me about how she's nervous, when I drive her there, I'm not going to say things, well, just suck it up, it's just a shot, you'll be fine, which is what I'd be tempted to say. I'm just going to listen to God. And I'm going to choose not to be right about anything with the shot, you'll be fine. I'm going to just choose to be in a relationship with her. I'm going to choose not to be God, the guy with all the answers. I'm going to choose a relationship like God humbly chose on the cross, even though he actually was the one who was right the whole time. It's really a question of who do you want to be? Do you want to be a Christian or not? Closing quote, and we'll pray, is St. Ignatius of Antioch said, I don't want to merely be called a Christian, but I want to actually be one. I don't want to merely be called a Christian, but I want to actually be one. Well, actually being one is letting Christ be who he is, which is the King of your life. And letting God be who he is, which is the biggest thing. And then letting everything else come in time. And I promise you that if you do that, you're going to be okay. And if the people around you do that, they're going to be okay. Because they're really going to be found. And I promise you that if you don't, you might not be okay. And the people around you might not be okay. I really think God is real, and as Jesus said, a house built on him is like a house built on rock, and it'll stand. A house not built on him is like a house built on sand, and it'll fall. I really think that if you let God be the God of your life, even death won't be the end. And I really think that if you refuse to let God be the God of your life, things like death will shipwreck you. I just think a relationship with God is the most important thing, and I think God's the biggest thing. And I think if you make him first, everything else will come, including your relationships with other people. Amen? Amen.
All right, this whole Jesus guy, this obscure carpenter who apparently died for me 2,000 years ago, all right, I'll open my heart this much.
Each person on earth has a mission, has a specific task that God has assigned to them that only they can do.
We don't have to be afraid of what we're going to see in the mirror because we're loved. That's what the gospel tells us, what the cross tells us. It's safe to look in the mirror. You are loved. Hi, I'm Dan Tarrant from Personally Catholic and ReEngaged Ministries. If you were blessed by one of our Personally Catholic videos produced by ReEngaged Ministries, would you consider becoming a donor? For a gift of at least $10 a month, you'll become a Personally Catholic partner. As a Personally Catholic partner, you'll get inside access to Personally Catholic and ReEngaged Ministries like never before. You'll get to see our videos while they're still in the process of being created. You'll get to see our books while they're still in the process of being written. Small monthly gifts are the financial heartbeat of any ministry. Go to personallycatholic.com today and become a Personally Catholic partner to help us invite Catholics into a more personal relationship with God in the heart of his Catholic Church. You're loved. So look in the mirror honestly, and then don't be afraid to listen to God.